Reconciliation by Walt Whitman. Word over all, beautiful as the sky, beautiful that war and all its deeds of carnage must in time be utterly lost, that the hands of the sisters death and night incessantly, softly wash again and ever again this soiled world. For my enemy is dead. A man as divine as myself is dead. I look where he lies, white-faced and still in the coffin. I draw near. I bend down and touch lightly with my lips the white face in the coffin.
Thank you, Paul. What Paul didn't say, and I wanted to thank him and all the Long Center, is that they gave us this space for free today.
Yay.
This is Austin's creative home, so it's time to be creative. And I wanted to thank Robert, who is the person that I called when SICA, the organization that I'm working with, decided to join with this coalition of nonprofit and non-governmental organizations all over the world to celebrate Peace Day, which is today. And they said, well, you have to organize an activity for peace in your community. And I thought, well, we could do poems. And then I didn't know if they would accept us, but they did. And then I said, oh, well, we better do something then. So I called Robert and I said, Robert, we have this idea of doing poems for peace, and it's really about encouraging people to share poems, whether they're their own poems that they wrote or poems that are their favorites. And it would be really nice. I thought that maybe Robert and his wife, Barbara, might do something with the Browning's poetry, because they're two people who love each other, and I think love is the beginning of peace. So he said, well, that's a lovely idea. And so,
but then we're not.
And then it turned out that he had a group of friends. So I made this poster, which you see, that says Robert and Barbara and friends. And then after the poster was made, I called him up and said, do we have some friends? And he said, yes, indeed. So you have these wonderful people on stage here today who are all going to be sharing poems. And Robert, you might want to say a few words on what you told them all about how to share poems. And there's more about our organization and SICA and Poems for Peace in your program. And I also want to call your attention to this little bookmark, because we are offering a $500 prize for an outstanding original poem for peace, as yet unpublished. And Cyrus Cassels, who is a professor at Texas State University in San Marcos, and also an award-winning poet, is going to be the final judge for that. So there's details on how you can enter the contest and win $500. Thank you.
Latifah, excuse me, may I interrupt for just a moment? If anyone here has a white Lexus that is parked out, well, I know, it's parked out in the service yard parking lot, it's about to be locked in until 2 o'clock in the morning by the Price is Right bus. So if any of you have the white Lexus, you may want to go move it. Thank you.
Thanks. I think it's great that we are doing Poems for Peace at the same time that Price is Right at Austin. Only Austin. Thank you.
All right, sure.
So turn them off.
The friends that Barbara and I invited include some of our friends from the theater community, Janelle Buchanan, an actress in town with many, many credits, and she and Barbara were most recently in a production of Dividing the Estate at Zach Theater together. Catherine Catmull, who has been in a number of productions. Also with, she and Barbara and Janelle have worked together numerous times. She's also a newly published writer with her first novel coming out. And I thought, why not have some actual poets up here as well? And I'm fortunate enough to know a couple of prize-winning poets. Carrie Fountain, over here, whose first collection, Burn Lake, is burning it up on the bookshelves, right?
On some bookshelves.
And Kurt Heinzelman, who has 2 new books of poems in the past year, the names they found there, and a translation of Jean Follin, book called Demarcations. So we will be hearing from all of them, but to get things started, I thought Barbara and I, as the hosts of the event, would begin. I do have a few poems from Robert Browning, since Latifah set me thinking in that direction. I looked at his poetry again and found a few that I really enjoyed. The first is called Life in a Love. Escape me? Never. Beloved, while I am I and you are you, so long as the world contains us both, me the loving and you the loath, while the one eludes must the other pursue. My life is a fault at last, I fear. It seems too much like a fate, indeed. Though I do my best, I shall scarce succeed. But what if I fail of my purpose here? It is but to keep the nerves at strain, to dry one's eyes and laugh at a fall, and, baffled, get up and begin again. So the chase takes up one's life, that's all. While look but once from your farthest bound at me, so deep in the dust and dark, no sooner the old hope goes to ground than a new one, straight to the self-same mark, I shape me, ever removed. And then to flip that title around, now we have Love in a Life. Room after room, I hunt the house through, we inhabit together. Heart, fear nothing, for heart, thou shalt find her, next time herself, not the trouble behind her, left in the curtain, the couch's perfume. As she brushed it, the cornice wreath blossomed anew, yon looking glass gleamed at the wave of her feather. Yet the day wears, and door succeeds door. I try the fresh fortune, range the wide house from the wing to the center. Still the same chance. She goes out as I enter. Spend my whole day in the quest. Who cares? But 'tis twilight, you see, with such sweets to explore, such closets to search, such alcoves to importune.
This is Sonnet 29 by William Shakespeare. When, in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him, with friends possessed, desiring this man's art, that man's scope, with what I most enjoy, contented least. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at the day-bray rising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that I should scorn to change my state with kings. Mm-hmm. Jerusalem by Naomi Shahib Nye, a poet I love. I'm not interested in who suffered the most. I'm interested in people getting over it. Once when my father was a boy, a stone hit him on the head. Hair would never grow there. Our fingers found the tender spot and its riddle. The boy who has fallen stands up. A bucket of pears in his mother's doorway welcomes him home. The pears are not crying. Later, his friend who threw the stone says he was aiming at a bird. And my father starts growing wings. Each carries a tender spot, something our lives forgot to give us. A man builds a house and says, I am native now. A woman speaks to a tree in place of her son, and olives come. A child's poem says, I don't like wars. They end up with monuments. He's painting a bird with wings wide enough to cover 2 roofs at once. Why are we so monumentally slow? Soldiers stalk a pharmacy. Big guns, little pills. If you tilt your head just slightly, it's ridiculous. There's a place in my brain where hate won't grow. I touch its riddle. Wind and seeds. Something pokes us as we sleep. It's late, but everything comes next.
One more Browning. O lyric love. O lyric love, half angel and half bird, and all a wonder and a wild desire. Boldest of hearts that ever braved the sun, took sanctuary within the holier blue, and sang a kindred soul out to his face, yet human at the red ripe of the heart. When the first summons from the darkling earth reached thee amid thy chambers, blanched their blue and bared them of the glory, to drop down, to toil for man, to suffer or to die, this is the same voice. Can thy soul know change? Hail then, and hearken from the realms of help. Never may I commence my song, my due to God, who best taught song by gift of thee, except with bent head and beseeching hand, that still, despite the distance and the dark, what was again may be, some interchange of grace, some splendor once thy very thought, some benediction anciently thy smile. Never conclude, but raising hand and head thither where eyes that cannot reach yet yearn for all hope, all sustainment, all reward, their utmost up and on, so blessing back at those thy realms of help, that heaven thy home, some whiteness which, I judge, thy face makes proud, some wanness where I think thy foot may fall. So now I'd like to welcome the first of our friends to the stage. I already mentioned she's a very accomplished actress. Please welcome Janelle Buchanan.
When Robert first asked me to participate in this event, I decided to interpret the word peace pretty literally as the absence of war. Had to narrow the field somehow. So this is where I began my search and my winnowing. And I first thought of 2 poems that were among the very first that I learned in, I think, late elementary school. I love them for their rhythm and their language and the images, and they've stuck with me all these years. So they're the first two that I'll read, followed by a few others that I've come across recently or remembered from one place or another. First, The Grass by Carl Sandburg. Pile the bodies high at Austerlitz and Waterloo. Shovel them under and let me work. I am the grass. I cover all. And pile them high at Gettysburg, and pile them high at Ypres and Verdun. Shovel them under and let me work. 2 years, 10 years, and passengers ask the conductor, "What place is this? Where are we now?" I am the grass. Let me work. Henry Reed was a British poet who was called up to the army during World War II, and he worked as a Japanese translator. He wrote this in 1942. It's The Naming of Parts. Today we have naming of parts. Yesterday we had daily cleaning, and tomorrow morning we shall have what to do after firing. But today we have naming of parts. Japonica glistens like coral in all of the neighboring gardens, and today we have naming of parts. This is the lower sling swivel, and this is the upper sling swivel, whose use you will see when you are given your slings. And this is the piling swivel, which in your case you have not got. The branches hold the gardens in their silent, eloquent gestures, which in our case we have not got. This is the safety catch, which is always released with an easy flick of the thumb. And please, do not let me see anyone use his finger. You can do it quite easy if you have any strength in your thumb. The blossoms are fragile and motionless, never letting anyone see any of them using their finger. And this, you can see, is the bolt. The purpose of this is to open the breech, as you see. We can slide it rapidly forwards and backwards. We call this easing the spring. And rapidly backwards and forwards, the early bees are assaulting and fumbling the flowers. They call it easing the spring. They call it easing the spring. It is perfectly easy if you have any strength in your thumb, like the bolt and the breech and the cocking piece and the point of balance, which in our case we have not got. And the almond blossoms silent in all of the gardens, and the bees going backwards and forwards, for today we have naming of parts. This is another British poet, Oliver Bernard. This is his peace poem. Waking at 5 or so to white sky and various bird beginnings from exhausting dreams of past emotional encounters, I can rest at last in a small room. Lying still, considering whether to go back to sleep, seeing the sky go the colors of sunrise, I begin to wonder how the tree looks and the wall. Downstairs in the shadow of the houses, sleepers lie asleep, bliss behind the children's eyelids, all alone in morning silence. What is peace if it is not loving indiscriminately others, watching over all human sleep and knowing there's no need and every need to do so? What is peace but watching while being loved and cared for by the very clouds and trees and sky and grass, nourishing earth and candid sky, breakneck rivers, rising tides? Newspapers at 7 o'clock are laying on the day the gray word of war and world of worry. All I want's a weather forecast promising there'll be more weather. Walking Meditation by Buddhist teacher and poet Thich Nhat Hanh. Take my hand. We will walk. We will only walk. We will enjoy our walk without thinking of arriving anywhere. Walk peacefully. Walk happily. Our walk is a peace walk. Our walk is a happiness walk. Then we learn that there is no peace walk, that peace is the walk, that there is no happiness walk, that happiness is the walk. We walk for ourselves. We walk for everyone, always hand in hand. Walk and touch peace every moment. Walk and touch happiness every moment. Each step brings a fresh breeze. Each step makes a flower bloom under our feet. Kiss the earth with your feet. Print on earth your love and happiness. Earth will be safe when we feel in us enough safety. This is Pablo Neruda, keeping quiet from his prayers for the earth. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment, without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it's about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now, I'll count to 12, and you keep quiet, and I will go. And last is this poem that was written during the Vietnam War by Greg Kuzma. It's called Peace So That. Every stinking son of a bitch can't come home to his lawnmower and his rice paddy. Every punished son of a bitch can return to his father's bedside. Every child of every bastard, every child of every hero of peace, of war, can talk it over with the man he blames. Every woman, mother, wife, daughter will rise in our arms like the tide. Every bomb be water. Every bullet be smashed into frying pans. Every knife sharpened again to cut fruit in thin slices. Every word flung out like a bullet in anger comes back to putrefy the tongue. Every man who has sat silent, be aware of his silence. Every rising of the blood, make love to a woman, a man. Every killer have only mirrors to shoot at. Every child a thumb to suck. Every house its chance to sink to the earth's calling. Every dead shall have no good reasons. And we be a long time at this.
Thank you, Janelle. Next up, one of our renowned local poets. Please welcome Carrie Fountain.
You guys are a tough act to follow. I'm really honored to be here. I'm very honored to be considered a friend of Barbara and Robert. I'm going to start with a poem by the poet William Stafford, who was a poet for peace. He was a conscientious objector during World War II. This poem is called For My Young Friends Who Are Afraid. There is a country to cross you will find in the corner of your eye, in the quick slip of your foot, air far down, a snap that might have caught. And maybe for you, for me, a high passing voice that finds its way by being afraid. That country is there for us, carried as it is crossed. What you fear will not go away. It will take you into yourself and bless you and keep you. That's the world, and we all live there. Just love that little poem. I'm going to just read a few poems of my own. This poem is from my book, Burn Lake. It's a really old poem. I never really get a chance to read it, but it is very much a kind of poem about, I don't know what it's about. It's called Purple Heart. There's a curse word in this poem. I'm sorry. I have it. In history, Beverly is showing me a bruise on the inside of her arm. She taps my shoulder each time the teacher turns to write on the board, so she can point out another one of its many features: yellowed edges, dead center, blue spots, red. "That's blood," she whispers, "all of it." And the war goes on a few more minutes, the click and drag of chalk on the board as the Viet Cong retreat again to the jungle and the class grows more restless, little conversations and flirtations springing up everywhere, until suddenly our teacher, suddenly overcome by our inattention, draws one incredible breath, turns and writes, "Fuck it," on the board, pulls her keys from a drawer, unhooks one, and lets it drop, clink, to the floor, then walks down the little aisle our desks make, looking no one in the face, until she is out of the room, gone forever, and one of us has to buzz the office. Who knows? Who knows it will be Beverly who will rise out of the silence and take charge, calling each of us to her, the stunned, the crying, the boy who takes the key to the window and throws the goddamn thing into the parking lot, the few who are taking advantage of this time, the few who are waiting, dumbstruck, for some order, for anything, even if it's simply for that horrible woman to come back, to continue the lesson, the unchanged, the seemingly unchanged, the changed. Those who will die young, those who will go on in this world to the 8th grade, to graduate, to investigate their interests and exploit their potential, to buy and sell, to make payments, to settle in. When she pushes the button, the secretary will say, "Yes," from 1,000 miles away, and Beverly will say, "Something violent has happened here." She among us understanding this is one way the violent get you, not by coming for you, but by leaving you behind. And then I'm going to read just a few poems from this new book of mine that I kind of thought were about peace, maybe finding peace. There are a few poems, there's a series of poems called Prayer that have a little key word associated with them. I'm going to read this first poem called Stupid. Oh, it's a crude, I used to teach 2nd grade. in another lifetime. Stupid. Oh, it's a crude little weapon, a spike, a nail, and they use it all day long, to mean anything they want it to mean. They're learning how to hate, how it can be so easy and pleasing, like watching a watermelon dropped from a high rooftop, smash open on the pavement below, over and over again in slow motion on a TV with the sound turned down. I already know how to hate. All I want to say to them is wait.
Oh, yeah.
And then these are just a few of these prayers. I think I'll just read 2 and then let the event continue. So this one is called Prayer, and the little subtitle or the little keyword is far away. You can stay behind the curtain of the sky, far away, the farthest thing away from me, and you can promise that you'll never return to this planet, to this galaxy. I don't believe you. There are too many moments. The public library of my childhood, with its bleach over urine smell, the taste of swimming pools. Even those 2 doves out there sitting in the high branches of that leaf-empty pecan. Even they know. They know the weight of their feathers and feet. Now they're gone. I'll never see them again. But that doesn't mean I'll never see them again. And then I'll end with this poem called The Ledge. It's a prayer called The Ledge. And this is sort of about, I think it's about praying and maybe the sort of where we try to find peace within ourselves, which I think is really about looking at our fears, as what William Stafford so wonderfully puts it in his poem. This is called Prayer, The Ledge. You think it's in the skull, behind the eyes, a room you make and then walk into. You think It's the feeling of desperate thirst that sometimes arises after you've begun to drink deeply, when really it's only ever been the feeling you got when finally, after many weeks of staring at the impeccable outline the dove's body left when it crashed into your office window, open-winged, and died, you finally hung your ass out onto the ledge and wiped it away with a damp Kleenex. The completion of a perfect and miserable task. Most often there is nothing, really nothing. And the whole thing feels like an idea you gave yourself, like hypochondria, or even more distant, the memory of hypochondria. And even that idea is a place you can't be right now, because right now you are in the car, waiting out the endless light at the corner of MLK and Congress, when the baby suddenly says, "Song, Mommy, song now," looking at you from her car seat through the rearview mirror with that grave and hilarious expectancy. And you are looking for the CD, and you are playing the song. Thank you so much for having me.
Our next guest, also a poet, was in charge for a number of years of the Poetry on the Plaza series at the Ransom Center, and he was kind enough to invite me to participate in that a number of times, and it gave me a great new appreciation for what it's like to hear poetry in public and to recite poetry in public. So I'm especially pleased that he was able to join us today on that count. Please welcome Kurt Heinzelman.
A number of years ago, a gentleman, Turkish gentleman, Mehmet Başçı, put together a book called World Leaders' Favorite Poems, subtitled A Book of Peace. It is somewhat laughable. But one of the poems in here was selected by Nestor Kirchner, who was for 4 years the president of Argentina from 2003 to 2007. I don't know if he was one of the good ones or one of the bad ones, but the poem he selected for this Book of Peace was by Jorge Luis Borges, the great Argentine poet and fiction writer. The poem is called The Just, Dos Justos, and I was delighted to be asked to translate it for the book. The Just. A man who cultivates a garden the way Voltaire wanted. One who is grateful there is music in the world. Who delights in knowing where words come from. Two workmen who, in a cafe in the South, play chess silently. The potter who deliberates over form and color. The typesetter who lays out this page well, but still is not pleased. A woman and a man reading the last tercets of a certain canto. One who strokes a sleeping animal. Who justifies or wishes to a wrong done to him. Who is grateful for Stevenson. Who prefers others to be right. These are the people who, ignored, are saving the world. I'm going to slip in a poem of mine because it was in this anthology, which is published by Mutabilis Press in Houston, called Improbable Worlds. It's not a book of peace poems, but it's supposed to be a book of poems about spirit, about the spirit, about spirituality, not necessarily religious spirit. And the poem is called Still Life. Still life is such a vexed term in English that for almost 5 decades I've resisted writing about it. Still life, after all, is about, in art, is about things that are not still living. They're dead. Rabbits, pheasants, lobsters, flowers. In fact, in French, still life is rendered as nature morte, dead nature. But of course, the art of still life tries to make those things that are not still living come alive through the art. So there's all sorts of punning and resonances in the phrase still life. Very dangerous phrase. Still life. For life is in a dark room what these cut flowers instill, in spite of how they sigh. The way once upon a time a barn burned held the whole prairie still in its palms. I have a war poem, but it's too long to read today. It's called Visiting the Sun, and it's in this book that was published last year of mine, which I recommend to you, not because of the contents, but because the whole cover of this book was designed by the wonderful Austin artist Lance Letcher. It's just probably the most beautiful book ever on the cover, and I can't speak for the contents, but I did want to say, yay, Lance. In this same book that I alluded to, this Book of Peace by the world leader's favorite poems, one of the people the compiler asked was Ariel Sharon. I don't think I'd go to Ariel Sharon for poems about peace. And in fact, the poem that he chose is not by the poet I would have chosen had I been Ariel Sharon. I would have chosen the great Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai, who died in 2000, and who really is the great poet of the modern Israeli state. This poem, translated from the Hebrew by Hannah Block and Hannah Kronfeld, was published after Amichai's death in 2000. But it speaks directly to what we're talking about today in commemoration of the UN International Day of Peace. In a sense, it's not even a poem. It's more like a cri de coeur, cry of the heart. He didn't publish it himself. It had to wait for his death. The poem is called May I Rest in Peace. May I rest in peace. I, who am still living, say, may I have peace in the rest of my life. I want peace right now, while I'm still alive. I don't want to wait like that pious man who wished for one leg of the golden chair of paradise. I want a 4-legged chair right here, a plain wooden chair. I want the rest of my peace now. I have lived out my life in wars of every kind, battles without and within, close combat, face to face, the faces always my own, my lover face, my enemy face, wars with the old weapons, sticks and stones, blunt axe, words, dull ripping knife, love and hate, and wars with newfangled weapons, machine gun, missile, words, landmines exploding, love and hate. I don't want to fulfill my parents' prophecy that life is war. I want peace with all my body and all my soul. Rest me in peace. I don't think Ariel Sharon is going I'm going to conclude with a poem that I think is one of the most beautiful in the English language. It's written by a contemporary poet named Wendell Berry. And it's from a book called The Country of Marriage, which I highly recommend. The poem is called The Wild Geese. Horseback on Sunday morning, harvest over, we taste persimmon and wild grape, sharp sweet of summer's end. In time's maze, over the fall fields, we name names that went west from here, names that rest on graves. We open a persimmon seed to find the tree that stands in promise, pale in the seed's marrow. Geese appear high over us, pass, and the sky closes. Abandon, as in love or sleep, holds them to their way, clear in the ancient faith. What we need is here. And we pray, not for new earth or heaven, but to be quiet in heart and in eye, clear. What we need is here.
Thank you, Kurt. I'm going to count to 12 and be still after I say the name of the title of Catherine Catmull's new book, so that you will all keep it in your mind and rush out to the nearest bookstore on October 2nd when it goes on sale. And your event, book people, is?
October 9th.
October 9th.
Come on out.
Summer and Bird. Okay. Please welcome Catherine Catmull.
I'm finding this really moving. I'm over there getting all choked up. I'm reading 3 short pieces. The first one is about hope, which I think is crucial when you're thinking about peace in a time of not peace. And it's a poem by Anne Sexton, who was a poet who was largely unfamiliar with hope. So I think that when she found some, she appreciated it. It's called Snow. Snow, blessed snow, comes out of the sky like bleached flies. The ground is no longer naked. The ground has on its clothes. The trees poke out of the sheets, and each branch wears the sock of God. There is hope. There is hope everywhere. I bite it. Someone once said, "Don't bite till you know if it's bread or stone." What I bite is all bread, rising, yeasty as a cloud. There is hope. There is hope everywhere. Today, God gives milk, and I have the pail. The second one is called Bear Hug. It's by Michael Ondaatje, and it's about daily love, which is surely the grounding of peace. Bear Hug. Griffin calls to come and kiss him goodnight. I yell, okay. Finish something I'm doing, then something else. Walk slowly round the corner to my son's room. He is standing, arms outstretched, waiting for a bear hug, grinning. Why do I give my emotion an animal's name? Give it that dark squeeze of death. This is the hug which collects all his small bones and his warm neck against me. The thin, tough body under the pajamas locks to me like a magnet of blood. How long was he standing there like that before I came?
And by Maya Angelou, we have Amazing Peace. In our joy, we think we hear a whisper. At first, it is too soft, then only half heard. We listen carefully as it gathers strength. We hear sweetness. The word is peace. It is loud now, louder than the explosion of bombs. We tremble at the sound. We are thrilled by its presence. It is what we have hungered for. Not just the absence of war, but true peace. A harmony of spirit and comfort of courtesies. Security for our beloveds and their beloveds. We, angels and mortals, believers and non-believers, look heavenward and speak the word aloud. Peace. We look at each other, then into ourselves, and we say without shyness or apology or hesitation, peace, my brother. Peace, my sister. Peace, my soul.
Kurt introduced us to the great Wendell Berry a few moments ago, and I serendipitously, I guess, have also chosen one of his. This is from his collection Window Poems, number 19. Peace. May he waken not too late from his wraths, to find his windowsill still clear in its wall, and the world there. Within things there is peace, and at the end of things. It is the mind turned away from the world that turns against it. The armed presidents stand on deadly islands in the air, overshadowing the crops. Peace. Let men who cannot be brothers to themselves be brothers to mulleins and daisies that have learned to live on the earth. Let them understand the pride of sycamores and thrushes that receive the light gladly and do not think to illuminate themselves. Let them know that the foxes and the owls are joyous in their lives, and their gaiety is praise to the heavens, and they do not raven with their minds. In the night, the devourer, and in the morning, all things find the light a comfort. Peace. The earth turns against all living in the end, and when mind has not outraged itself against its nature, they die and become the place they lived in. Peace to the bones that walk in the sun toward death, for they will come to it soon enough. Let the phoebes return in spring and build their nest of moss in the porch rafters, and in autumn let them depart. Let the gardens be planted, and let the frost come. Peace to the porch and the garden. Peace to the man in the window. Before I offer our final selection for the day, I'd like to thank again the Longsetter, Paul Butel, Latifa, Tarmina, and Sika for the inspiration for this event, and to everyone who participated, and all the poets who created the gorgeous words that we spoke today, and to thank all of you for your attention. I hope you will take inspiration not only from what has been spoken, that you've heard, but that you will be inspired to go out and participate in your own way by reading a poem yourself, reciting it to someone you know, writing a poem, or otherwise continuing the tradition of poems of peace. And there's a good chance that a year from now, on the next International Day of Peace, we will engage in this again and have a new tradition started that will, like the persimmon seed, plant promise in the world. The final selection is by E.E. Cummings. Love is a place. Love is a place, and through this place of love move with brightness of peace all places. Yes is a world, and in this world of yes live, skillfully curled, all worlds. Thank you so much.
This is an excerpt from an essay written by the novelist Ian McEwan a few days after 9/11. All through Thursday, we heard from the bereaved how they took those last calls. A San Francisco husband slept through his wife's call from the World Trade Center. The tower was burning around her, and she was speaking on her mobile phone. She left her last message to him on the answering machine. A TV station played it to us while it showed the husband standing there listening. Somehow he was able to bear hearing it again. We heard her tell him through her sobbing that there was no escape for her. The building was on fire and there was no way down the stairs. She was calling to say goodbye. There was really only one thing for her to say, those 3 words that all the terrible art, the worst pop songs and movies, the most seductive lies can somehow never cheapen. I love you. She said it over and again before the line went dead. And that is what they were all saying down their phones from the hijacked planes and the burning towers. There is only love and then oblivion. Love was all they had to set against the hatred of their murderers. Waking before dawn, going about our business during the day, we fantasize ourselves into the events. What if it was me? This is the nature of empathy, to think oneself into the minds of others. These are the mechanics of compassion. You are under the bedclothes, unable to sleep, and you are crouching in the brushed steel lavatory at the rear of the plane, whispering a final message to your loved one. There is only that one thing to say, and you say it. All else is pointless. You have very little time before some holy fool who believes in his place in eternity kicks in the door, slaps your head, and orders you back to your seat. 23C. Here is your seatbelt. There is the magazine you were reading before it all began. The banality of these details might overwhelm you. If you are not already panicking, you are clinging to a shred of hope that the captain, who spoke with such authority as the plane pushed back from the stand, will rise from the floor, his throat uncut, to take the controls. If the hijackers had been able to imagine themselves into the thoughts and feelings of the passengers, they would have been unable to proceed. It is hard to be cruel once you permit yourself to enter into the mind of your victim. Imagining what it is like to be someone other than yourself is at the core of our humanity. It is the essence of compassion, and it is the beginning of morality. The hijackers used fanatical certainty, misplaced religious faith, and dehumanizing hatred to purge themselves of the human instinct for empathy. Among their crimes was a failure of the imagination. As for their victims in the planes and in the towers, in their terror, they would not have felt it at the time, but those snatched and anguished assertions of love were their defiance.